new developments in the secret emails of Jeffrey Epstein. So where we last left off with Epstein was going through the 100,000 Ehud Barak emails, where we learned that Jeffrey Epstein was a fixer, a financial middleman between one of the most significant figures in the history of Israeli intelligence, as well as the Harvard DNC side of the blob in the U.S. with Larry Summers. And we've covered Epstein's relationship with the CIA and Bill Burns. We've covered Epstein's relationship with Iran-Contra in the 1980s. We've covered Epstein's involvement with Les Wexner and the Limited and handling the money for the Limited in the 1990s. We've covered Epstein helping to set up the Clinton Global Initiative with the Clintons in the early 2000s. And we've covered a little bit Jeffrey Epstein's fund, his private fund, managing over $1 billion run out of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, this investigation, which just came out yesterday, is from Bloomberg. I'll put the link here. It's Epstein's investments, hedge funds, brokerages, billionaires. Jeffrey Epstein's financial ties on and off Wall Street were broader than previously known, a cache of emails reveals. So we're gonna look at this. We saw, for example, that Jeffrey Epstein was a middleman with the French financial juggernaut Rothschild family, with her lady Linda Rothschild in the Larry Summers and Ehud Barak affairs. Knowing exactly what Epstein's investments were are very helpful to cross-match how they line up with various foreign policy initiatives. For example, if it turns out, we covered, for example, that Soros was investing in clean stove technology in Africa, while USAID was running pressure programs in Africa to get those companies to adopt clean stoves, right? So they're using U.S. renewables instead of Russian energy sources. I will be curious to see what these investments are and cross-match them against initiatives endorsed by U.S. statecraft. If it turns out there are those investments, it might allow an investigator with a security clearance to match, for example, CIA internal files around financing for various initiatives that these hedge fund money movements may connect to. So let's see. Just weeks after Epstein was charged with soliciting prostitution, he received a coveted invitation from a wealth manager, a shot at investing with the hedge fund Renaissance Technologies, whose reputation for success is almost mythical. It was August 2006. You see this? And newspapers were reporting accounts of Epstein paying teenagers for sex. A rising star at Smith Barney named Greg Hirsch wrote an email to Epstein's office. I would like to bring Jeffrey's attention that Citigroup's feeder fund, Renaissance, will be closing to new investors at the end of this month as it nears its limit. I feel it would be a mistake to not make this investment, wrote Hirsch. Epstein jumped. His chief investment vehicle, the financial trust company, was in for $1 million, he wrote. Let's do it for $1 million. God, Epstein just, his spelling is atrocious. 2 days later, when the Palm Beach Post published an editorial about Epstein, he was over 50 and there were girls, his office received the investment details and fees. The exchange ended with Epstein's one-word go-ahead fine. Now look, at this point, he hadn't been convicted, right? He was charged, but he hadn't been convicted. So, let's be clear about that. He wouldn't get a plea deal. The plea deal would happen 2 years later. And you are innocent until presumed guilty. So they're trying to sort of cast, aspersions or take shots at Citigroup by emphasizing this. I don't know. You are innocent until proven guilty. And at that point, all you had was, an indictment. Okay, so saying that the relationship ended in 2007. On Wall Street, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cache of 18,000 emails sent to and from Epstein's private Yahoo account, obtained by Bloomberg earlier this year, shows the abundance of access he enjoyed across Wall Street. It's been well established JP Morgan Chase and other major banks, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's actually see the emails. Epstein's first stint in finance ended terribly. In 1981, he left Bear Stearns with a cloud hanging over him. That was the whole Reg D violation, allegedly. Reg D is private offerings. When his bosses found out he'd loaned $15,000 to a friend so the friend could buy stock, and they told him it could violate securities law. The way it was handled subsequently was offensive to me, and I decided to resign. Epstein told regulators a month later. Okay, so he claims that he voluntarily resigned. When he returned to high finance, this time as an exclusive money manager, his old firm was woven into his work, the emails show. That's exactly what oh my God. I told you guys. I literally told you guys this is what you would find. You can play the tape back. And he was still a client of Bear Stearns even after he left. What I assume happened is that he flew a little close to the sun at Bear Stearns, but they still found him useful. So he served as the front end and Bear Stearns still did the business on the back. I was going to work up to this, but maybe I'll say this now. It's important to understand that he kept these relationships with Bear Stearns. Where I am on this right now, and I think what makes it mentally easy to understand, and it doesn't mean it was structured exactly like this, but it would be very easy for a situation to arise as follows. Bear Stearns liked Epstein. He was a rainmaker. He was good at bringing clients in and keeping them happy, but he was bad at the actual technical work. And he was loose in terms of ethics and morals. And so he was a liability to keep on payroll. But Epstein could continue to be very useful to Bear Stearns if he simply went out on his own, managed those relationships, and then kicked the business to Bear Stearns. So instead of Jeffrey Epstein being a Bear Stearns employee, he would be a Bear Stearns client, and Bear Stearns would simply service the clients of Jeffrey Epstein that Epstein was managing. That way, if Epstein messed anything up or he didn't bring heat from the SEC, because the direct relationship was being managed through his outside shop. You can play the tape back of me telling you guys that Jeffrey Epstein will have worked with the Bear Stearns network, which then became the JP Morgan Chase network in 2008 when JP Morgan took over Bear Stearns as Bear collapsed, and that Epstein never handled the finance side of finance. He only had 4 years in the game when he was at Bear. He joined Bear in 1977. He left in 81. You can't handle shit on your own after 4 years. You're a 4-year-old? All you know is how to make coffee 4 years in. As a fourth-year associate corporate attorney, you can't do shit. You can go into diligence rooms and read the labor agreements and stock certificates. You don't know how to structure a complex multi-billion-dollar deal to make sure it complies with thousands of regulations, from tax to merger approvals to FTC review to securities law to international regulations. You're a fucking baby. The idea that when Epstein went out on his own and started Intercontinental Assets Group in 81, that he was handling Adnan Khashoggi's money, or he was handling the money of a Spanish royalty. No. He was handling the relationship, and Bear continued. Bear went from being his employer to being a client. Now, I've seen circumstantial evidence suggesting that, but what they're saying is this appears to now be confirmed. His companies put tens of millions of dollars in Bear investment funds. He helped oversee one of Bear CEO Jimmy Cain's trusts. This is exactly what I was saying. He was an instrument of the Bear Stearns network for the entire 1980s. That's how I see him. Ace Greenberg, all of that. The Edgar Bronfman. But he was too loose and reckless to be at Bear itself. They wanted someone who could take the risks and have his name on the dotted line so that if he fucked up, as he was prone to do, it wouldn't get Bear in trouble. Same reason that Epstein got power of attorney over the Les Wexner estate. I don't think this is because he had blackmail on Les Wexner. I think it was deliberate on Wexner's part. That way, Wexner would not be the authorized signatory on anything fucked up that Epstein did. Epstein was also chairman of Liquid Funding Limited, a Bermuda-based investment vehicle that Bear co-owned. The emails show that he called the shots as money moved out of a Bear account belonging to one of Epstein's key clients, Les Wexner. This is exactly what I told you guys. Epstein was a Bear Stearns guy and never went out on his own. I, for example, run a foundation. If I was sick in the head, I could totally see a world where it's like, okay, listen. Let's use the example of something like what James O'Keefe does, right? James O'Keefe does these, hidden camera videos, and the business model is, they get donor money, and I don't know if they monetize, the videos or whatever, but basically, the better the video, the more money. Let's just treat it as Project Veritas before O'Keefe went out on his own. Let's say they had an employee who was really fucking good at the undercover videos, but really bad at following laws, and did a lot of shit, was really good at schmoozing and getting people to tell them their secrets, getting people to make the confession, getting the money shot for Veritas. But the person was prone to criminality. The person often did fucked up things in order to get that end result, the recorded camera video. I could see a world where the Veritas people say, listen, we love you, big guy. We want to keep working with you, but you can't be here at Veritas implicating Veritas in your illegal activity to get the product, the video. And in this case, the product is the deals. So how about you go out on your own? We'll call him Tony. Tony is our star money shot guy. He's great at getting the videos, but he's crazy, and he takes too many risks. I could see a world where Veritas says to Tony, listen, we'll pay you the same amount we've been paying you. In fact, we'll pay you even more for you to leave Project Veritas, start your own independent investigation company, and we'll work out an arrangement where we'll pay that investigation company, that private investigation firm, for footage that you obtain. But you are no longer going to do that in your capacity as a Project Veritas employee. You are just a completely different entity that we will occasionally buy your secretly recorded videos. That way, if you do something illegal, Project Veritas didn't do something illegal. This totally outside, independent, completely on its own entity did. And if you ever get in trouble, we get to wash our hands and say, that guy just showed us this footage. That's what Bear Stearns did with Jeffrey Epstein. He was a talented schmoozer. Clients liked him, but he didn't know fuck all about finance. And he didn't know fuck all about finance or securities law. So they said, okay, listen, make rain, but do it from your own vehicle. Epstein was savvy in a fight that began once. Okay, so let's see. I want to see the receipts on this. Let's see. Okay. In August 2007, after the collapse of Bear hedge funds that Epstein had invested in, his office got an email from a lawyer representing other investors. Greek beer fortune. Attorney invited Epstein's office to join a confidential plan to boot Bear's directors from fund leadership through a vote and replace them with an ally. Do it, Epstein told the lawyer. 3 months of emails and meetings followed as the team kept Epstein's office posted on strategy and internal fights. Now, remember, guys, that is 26 years later. Epstein left Bear Stearns in 1981. 1980, 1981. Let's call it 1981. In August 2007, he was still part of, effectively, the senior leadership. 26 years. 3 months of emails and meetings followed as the team kept Epstein's office posted on strategy and internal fights. Epstein soon flipped against the investor group, triggering rage from the Greek beer era. I related to Epstein your message on the... Let me just... Okay. Things would get really nasty. Okay. It's with particular ill grace that you were trying to suggest Mr. Epstein's claimed surprise at our anger at your misconduct today. 180-degree turnabout. Epstein had been playing both sides. Behind the scenes, he was sharing intelligence with Cain. And who is Cain here? Who's Cain? Jimmy Cain, who was then the head of Bear Stearns in 2004. Okay. Epstein emailed the Bear Stearns boss a list of complaints about the prosecutors investigating him for sex crimes and money laundering. There's another twist coming. Following Bear Stearns' meltdown the next March, Epstein made preparations to sue Bear and several top executives, according to a June 2008 draft of a lawsuit from his inbox. In it, one of the most notorious figures of his era presents himself as the opposite, a victim. Okay, are they not going to show that email? Where's the hyperlink? That's annoying. The draft complaint asks for more than $70 million in damages. It alleges bankers dumped toxic waste into Bear funds and depicts Epstein as a loyal associate who was fraudulently induced by manipulative bankers. Bear betrayed its special, continuous 32-year relationship with him. Continuous relationship for 32 years. Continuous means unbroken. If you are going, what this means, this appears to confirm exactly what I said about Jeffrey Epstein and the Bear relationship, the Bear Stearns relationship in the 1980s as Iran-Contra was playing out. Now, there's a branch at CIA Finance Office, Financial Operations, right? Financial Operations. It changed its name. So what I'm getting at here is we've gone over many of these internal CIA documents showing the CIA working with various banks for covert action. We went over how the CIA worked with BCCI, Bank of Credit and Commerce International. We went over how the CIA worked with Riggs Bank in D.C. My question is, if the CIA were to go through and do a thorough review of Iran-Contra, as they were working directly with Adnan Khashoggi as the middleman, moving the money. That is a known case where the Saudi arms dealer was the middleman between the CIA and Israel to sell weapons illegally to Iran and skim the profits of the weapons sale to pay the Nicaraguan Contras. Did Bear Stearns touch or move any of that money? Did Bear Stearns touch any of the skim? Did Bear Stearns touch any of the wire transfers from bank to bank? As that money was moved through Cayman Islands and Panamanian and Bahamas-based banks, did Bear Stearns handle any of that? If so, you have your Jeffrey Epstein CIA right there. You follow me? You can go operation by operation with all these money movements, and you could get where Bear Stearns handled it in things that Jeffrey Epstein claimed to take responsibility for. When Jeffrey Epstein said that he handled Adnan Khashoggi's money, but we know that Jeffrey Epstein can't read a fucking spreadsheet, and that he was still working with Bear Stearns, paying Bear Stearns to do this work. If he claimed he was handling it, but Bear Stearns actually was, then you know where Bear Stearns handled it and Jeffrey Epstein claimed it. That was Jeffrey Epstein serving both clients effectively, the CIA and Bear Stearns, where Bear Stearns was moving the money covertly for the CIA, the same way a lot of these major hedge funds do in this way. I'll remind you also, George Soros is another one of these mercurial hedge fund guys who moves a lot of this money around. But while we're waiting on that, let's keep reading. So it's a continuous 32-year relationship. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Epstein did, in fact, sue Bear over related issues, including fraudulent misrepresentation in 2009. 2 years later, J.P. Morgan agreed to settle his claim against Bear for about $9 million. Kane died in 2021. No names. During a given week, one investment sent Epstein's way might have been for him, but might have been for Wexner, the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret. Sometimes even Epstein himself hesitated to say what went there, what went where. In late 2006, when Indicki passed along, that's the lawyer, passed along a question about whether one securities investment, the 3x levered basket, was for a Wexner family trust or Epstein's family, Epstein told his lawyer to remind him about it in a couple days. For a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch named Ed Spector, that fluidity was par for the course. In 2005, the Merrill advisor sent Epstein a reminder about the timing of investment for Wexner's wife. Because remember, at this point, Epstein had durable power of attorney over Wexner's finances. That November, in an email about a plan to go long the Australian dollar while shorting the New Zealand. That's interesting. That's a very George Soros-y type bet. This is what George Soros would do all the time. Foreign exchange, forex speculation. Soros would be working with the CIA in the 1980s, knowing the CIA was going to organize a color revolution in Poland, backing the Solidarity movement, while Soros is working directly on the ground in Poland with the Solidarity movement. And way before the market knows that there's going to be this revolution in Poland, Soros, his New York hedge fund, is making foreign exchange speculation bets on the direction of Poland's currency. Insider trading on CIA covert action. Now, if you remember, we saw Epstein, I believe, around this time in 2005. No, I think in 2013, Epstein went to Mongolia. Was it Mongolia or Cote d'Ivoire? It was one of those two. And in his delegation to talk to the government of either Cote d'Ivoire or Mongolia, in his delegation was Larry Summers, president of Harvard, and also the friggin' one-time Treasury Secretary of the United States, but also I believe it was the former Prime Minister of Australia. You guys remember that? Is it here? Australia. Yeah. This is it. Is this Mongolia? Yeah, this is the Mongolia one. Kevin Rudd, the former Prime Minister of Australia, Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, and Jeffrey Epstein, where Epstein was the financier. So it's interesting that Epstein is taking long positions on Australia's currency while doing this, just noting that. Curious how much money was actually moved in that, if it's a really large amount. Let's see. New Zealand, okay, Spector asked if he wanted to split $10 million between Financial Trust, his entity, and Wexner. Epstein told him all Wexner. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Because the next article that we're going to get into in our Epstein new developments is specifically about the Wexner Foundation and Deep Harbor. Wexner Foundation. Okay. So it's Wexner who is making that bet on Australia's currency. The inbox shows Epstein as a brash power. Now, you know what else is interesting about this? What was discovered around that time, wasn't it Rio Tinto, Western Australia? Rio Tinto, the very same company that Epstein and Larry Summers were involved in Mongolia, has these operations in Australia. Let's go like before 2015, see if there's any. Rio Tinto's origins in Australia date back almost 120 years. Ooh. The very company that Soros would buy up, that was the site of all the intrigue. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Let me turn on the music. Sorry, I didn't see what level it was set at. So the very site that the State Department was pulling for Rio Tinto, USAID was pulling for Rio Tinto, George Soros was invested in Rio Tinto. I have to wonder, in 2005, did Rio Tinto make a big move in Australia? And they made a big bet on the Australian currency. I don't know. Things like that, I just wonder. Was Wexner involved in Rio Tinto the same way Soros was? Because Soros is completely head to toe involved in the Harvard Kennedy Center. And the very next piece that we're going to get to is about Jeffrey Epstein, Les Wexner, and Harvard, the Harvard Kennedy Center. Very interesting. In early 2006, Epstein asked for a favor that made Spectre uncomfortable. Jeffrey, I just got back to the office in New York. Please understand that as I thought about our conversation the last couple of days, two thoughts hit me. First, that I do not know the gentleman, no names, well enough to approach him to do this. See, this is what I mean. He's a loose cannon. He'll make the direct ask that, like, Bear Stearns wouldn't necessarily want to. He does the dirty work, the uncomfortable stuff that has to get done. He would look to me like I'm at me like I'm nuts and would ask what my interest is. I only know him in a business sense. Also, as innocent as the request may sound, it could result in big problems for me internally if this gentleman doesn't think it's appropriate conversation. There's zero tolerance in the organization. The emails don't spell out what Epstein wanted, but he kept pressing the advisor. Spectre bristled. Jeffrey, as you know, I have a great deal of respect for you. I've asked around this afternoon after receiving your email on a no-name basis and advised that I can have significant issues approaching the topic. I hope you understand. That cryptic exchange and Epstein's July arrest in Florida didn't stop the pair from doing big business. In August, Epstein thanked Spectre for telling him that a Hertz investment had paid $2.2 million each to Epstein's firm and a Wexner trust fund. Interesting. So Epstein and Wexner were making matching investments frequently. 50-50. 50 Epstein, 50 Wexner. Billionaire-only deals. It would take a commitment of $20 million or so a year. Got it. I'm in. So confirmed, in 2006, he was a billionaire. How many billionaires were there in 2006? How many billionaires were there in the world in 2006? Epstein in late 2007 was also connected to billionaire Carl Icahn's firm. Carl Icahn. The den of thieves. Barbarians at the gate. Mergers and acquisitions kingpin. Yin Harbor Drive Capital. Blah, 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 blah. Bruce Eager, a former Bear Stearns executive, trading Indian equity volatility. $5 million investment here. Investing in an oil firm. What oil firm was it? This is what's so annoying. Why are there no hyperlinks? I want to read the actual emails. I don't want to trust you, bro, that you're faithfully summarizing it. I want to see what the emails are. This is so annoying. Some of Epstein's most intriguing work wasn't with banks, brokerage, or hedge funds. Okay. Epstein had an idea for Leon Black, the co-founder of Apollo Global Management. Yep. Marvin Minsky, MIT. Their pitch was to build a nonprofit with for-profit spinoffs. Like OpenAI? I'm telling you, nonprofits are the biggest business in the world. A nonprofit with for-profit spinoffs. Jeez, crazy. Epstein's role for clients is something less conventional than mere money manager. In a batch of 2015 emails that he later forwarded to himself, he tried to shape Leon Black's financial life. Leon, yesterday I again spent hours upon hours of my time with your office, he wrote. He complained that Leon Black had gotten himself into a fix by ignoring his advice from a year earlier, going so far as to quote it. Your family office needs a daddy. Children with good intentions are running around, sniping, nitpicking, with little direction. Now that's interesting because Leon Black would later pay Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, there were only 793 million billionaires in the entire world in 2006. So Jeffrey Epstein was one of the top 800 richest men in the world. How much money did Leon Black pay Jeffrey Epstein around 2012, 2015? I think it was like 150 million, right? So now we're getting a little bit of insight as to like what that was. Yeah, I think it was 158 million, it said. 158 million. For Jeffrey Epstein to be the daddy. Yeah, Black here. Epstein made clear that his involvement didn't come cheap. Very serious. I'm willing to continue to accommodate some of your concerns, but I am under no circumstances, none, willing to spend my time for free. It's not fair. He added a parenthetical and another inside it. You had claimed I had you over a barrel. A horrible position to be in with my very close friend. Unfortunately, I fear that if you are not cautious in the near term, another barrel will appear to be of your own design. Spicy. Now, Leon Black is a Trump booster. His son, Ben Black, runs the Development Finance Corporation, I believe, the Trump admin, which is an adjacent vehicle to USAID. That's very interesting. At the end of 2015, an email described one of Black's deputies as a little man using your power to appear larger, and another colleague as self-aware enough to know she was over her head. Wow. So, billionaire Leon Black told Jeffrey Epstein that Epstein had him over a barrel. My very close friend. I'm not willing to work for free. And then Leon Black pays him $150 million. Now, what's interesting is he had paid him $50 million in 2013, $70 million in 2014. And these emails were in 2015. So Leon Black at this point had already paid him $100 million. $120 million, right? Yeah, $120 million. These emails were in 2015. So it looks like the extra amount that was paid was $30 million. But Leon Black had already paid Jeffrey Epstein $120 million. And Epstein was still trying to get more out of him. And I guess got another $30 million out of this. That's interesting. Epstein had wide influence over Wexner's world. He dictated time off for the members of the billionaire's family office. The family office is the personal hedge fund, personal private investment funds of the billionaire class. He orchestrated the movement of money, advised on the payment plan for the wife's private jet, suggested how to structure the purchase of a condo, So that seems to be his specialty, is like weird, shady structuring. Consistent with what his role might be as a financial fixer. Passed judgment on senior executives at L Brands. Nicknamed one of them Mighty Mouse after the cartoon. He has no judgment. Be careful about one of the Limited's directors. Epstein advised the rich, powerful, well-connected. When Neely Priel Barak, whose husband, Ehud Barak, had been Israel's prime minister, was making high-level introductions to clients for a fee, she turned to Epstein, Ehud Barak's wife. Identify strategic partnerships, screen business opportunities, and introduce clients to Israeli business and public opinion leaders. Yeah, I think that's right. I think she just asked for him to review her own setup. Even though she already started sending it out, Epstein's lawyer reviewed and explained step by step how it should be redrafted in its entirety. Okay. Opportunities kept coming for Epstein even in his final years. In January 2018, he heard from the deputy of music mogul, Tommy Mottola. Music industry. About investing in a musical he was producing that covers the life of disco queen Donna Summer. Okay, well, the documents were sent to dozens of people. He was just a guy with a lot of money. Okay? Interesting. All right. All right, we learned some interesting stuff from there, but that's annoying that they didn't give the source documents. I'm a little bit underwhelmed, but the 32-year continuous relationship with Bear Stearns is an interesting addition to our corpus of knowledge. All right, so now this is something that this is an article I'm really looking forward to. Let me one sec. There's something that who was it? Who's the drop site news? Website news. Who's the main guy who I think wrote this? One sec. Why is it? Did he delete that tweet? Did he delete that tweet? No, I have the link, but he had a summary of it right here that I thought was very interesting. Stephen Walt was the academic dean of the Harvard Kennedy School. Did he delete this tweet? It says Les Wexner was one of the largest donors to the Kennedy School, if not the largest. I did not know that. This line right here, Les Wexner was one of the largest donors to the Harvard Kennedy School, if not the largest donor to the Harvard Kennedy School. That reveal is fucking crazy. Because the Harvard Kennedy School is CIA fucking central. It's the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. And this is one of our coordinating nodes, Harvard Kennedy School, for the CIA to groom leaders in foreign countries through the Harvard Kennedy School. When they were backing Garry Kasparov to be the president of Russia in the early 2000s, they started by bringing Kasparov to the Harvard Kennedy School. Time and time and time again. I mean, there's so much Harvard Kennedy School stuff, it would make your fucking head spin. So much CIA shit. And its largest donor was Les Wexner? What the fuck? What the fuck? Did Alexei Navalny ever go to the Kennedy School? Let's see. Because we know that he was at the Yale-Jackson School. Alexei Navalny have any touch points with the Harvard Kennedy School? By the way, who did... I just did this stream on Moldova. Right? I mean, I did that stream with you guys like 3 months ago, but I just posted it. About how the CIA and USAID were backing the current NATO puppet in Moldova, and they banned all the political parties running against her. Head of State of Moldova, Maya Sandu. This is the CIA-backed president of Moldova. Harvard Kennedy School. And brought to the Harvard Kennedy School in 2022 to urge graduates to jump into the political fray. This is literally, remember the USAID Administrator Samantha Power? That hot tape that we went over? About funneling tens of millions of dollars to support Maya Sandu, and she bragged that Maya Sandu was a Harvard Kennedy School girl. She addressed 609 Harvard Kennedy School graduates. Here it is, Harvard Kennedy School. This is their official YouTube. She gave the graduation address. In 2010. So 10 years before she took power. They groomed her there. 10 years before the CIA backed her, she was groomed at the Harvard Kennedy School. Here you go. From the New York Times. Moldova's, it's the school of government. When we want to influence other governments. That's why the Harvard Kennedy School gets so much fucking... They get hundreds of millions of dollars from USAID. Moldova's pro-Europe leader tries to thwart Russian influence. Maya Sandu, the president, remains popular and deep as Putin applies pressure. So they're Russiagating the CIA-backed regime enemies. In the very first sentence, when Maya Sandu, president of Moldova, graduated from the Harvard Kennedy School in 2010, it's like, I'm telling you, the Harvard Kennedy School is like the CIA. You're in it once, you're in it for the rest of your life. Okay. So let's see. Harvard Kennedy School. So it looks like, so it looks like Yale got Navalny. Because if you remember, we went over this. Navalny, Yale. Navalny, Yale. This is the Harvard-Yale rivalry. Sec. Yale. By the way, Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor for Biden, head of statecraft, intelligence, and military for the Biden administration, is now a Kissinger professor of the practice of statecraft and world order at the Harvard Kennedy School. But Navalny was, let's see, Navalny, second. Navalny, yeah. Here you go. Navalny was Yale instead of Harvard. The Yale Jackson School of Global Affairs, the Maurice Greenberg World Fellows Program. Bill Clinton in 1992, during the transition, asked Maurice Greenberg to be the CIA director. Maurice Greenberg turned it down to keep running AIG. And at the Yale Jackson School, what was Navalny taught? The art of doing. The art of organizing mostly peaceful protests, a la your parliament buildings on fire in Ukraine, in Georgia, in Belarus. The leader of Russian opposition. 2010, the exact same year that Maya Sandu was being groomed at the Harvard Kennedy Center, Navalny was being groomed at the nearly CIA director school at Yale. But Les Wexner was the largest funder. Let me show you guys a little bit. Okay, but the Harvard Kennedy School did host a forum event discussing the Oscar-winning documentary Navalny. The Belfer Center at Harvard. The Belfer Center is the CIA central part of the Harvard Kennedy School. Hosted a January 2021 seminar on Navalny's detention and implications. Harvard ran events and lectures focused on Navalny. But let me go to search for I'll pull the exact amount, but I know that USAID, I think it was like $40 million or something. Harvard Kennedy School. So Les Wexner gave more than that. Wexner Foundation cuts ties with Harvard after dismal failure to condemn Hamas. Wow. October 2023, 10 days after October 7th. After a 34-year partnership, the Wexner Foundation will end its financial and programmatic relationship with Harvard and the Harvard Kennedy School over October 7th. 34 years. That'll be 1989. Right when Epstein is starting to link up with Wexner. See, when I think Harvard Kennedy School, I just think CIA. So when I hear that Les Wexner, for 34 years, was one of, if not the single largest donor to the CIA Global Leader Incubator School, I go, what the flying fuck? Because Jeffrey Epstein had durable power of attorney over Wexner's finances. This would seem to be another Epstein CIA point. The Wexner Israel Fellowship. Wexner Center for the Arts. Well, that's at Ohio State University. All right. So here's the article. Jeffrey Epstein aided Alan Dershowitz's attack on Mearsheimer and Walt's Israel lobby. Okay, so this is the book, The Israel Lobby, about the lobbying efforts of the Israeli government, pro-Israel advocates inside the United States. Which I read, and it's an interesting book. It's pretty neutral in its tone, and it does pretty dramatically lay out the extent of the lobbying effort for Israel. And it's very academic, but it does, pretty comprehensively lay out the structure of things like AIPAC, the federations, the JCRCs, all this stuff. And at the time, you had Stephen Walt was the director. I think he was the head of the Harvard Kennedy School. And John Mearsheimer today is pretty good voice on NATO stuff. Mearsheimer is belongs to what they call the realist camp, and is pretty good on NATO. Criticizing NATO and U.S. foreign policy around Russia, Ukraine stuff. Stephen Walt is now tilted into the China camp. He's at the Belfer Center, and is I think he wrote a book on why we should love China or something. It's a little bit strange if I'm getting that right. And Stephen Walt, one sec. Maybe I'm thinking Graham Allison. One second. Stephen Walt, China. The realist debate over. Stop worrying about Chinese hegemony in Asia. Stephen Walt. Now listen, there is a camp about this that there's a reasonable argument to be made that we overstretch ourselves with all of the resources we spend fighting for influence in China's near abroad. But it looks a little weird when it's accompanied by how much money do conservatives argue China donated to Harvard over the past 5 years. I'm asking it like this because, there's all these Chinese students. There's these foreign students, which are a big part of the income stream, but CCP linked donations to Harvard, I believe, are in the tens of millions or hundreds of millions. It's a huge amount. Or it's China or CCP. Because it's one thing when you read this and it's coming from an independent voice. It's another thing when it's China is paying hundreds of millions of dollars, or CCP linked individuals are donating tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to the institution, and then the institution puts out, stop worrying about Chinese hegemony. Because when you've got the head of the Harvard Kennedy School saying this, and the Harvard Kennedy School is one of the major nodes of Harvard University, you wonder, that makes it a horse of a different color. Yeah, Bush Foundation. Yeah, we covered that in our streams. All right. The paper became the basis of a book in 2007, unflinching analysis of, AIPAC, yada, yada. Mearsheimer and Walt described a loose coalition of philanthropists, think tanks, advocacy groups, and Christian Zionist organizations that routinely pulled U.S. policy. Blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm mostly interested here in the Wexner relationship with Harvard Kennedy School. I'm very familiar with the Israel Lobby book, and I'm less interested in the Alan Dershowitz like media attack type thing as I am about what was Wexner's role and therefore Epstein's role with the CIA center of Harvard, the Harvard Kennedy School, this whole time. So that's what I'm going to be mining this for. Mearsheimer revealed that the editor of The Atlantic offered them a $10,000 kill fee if the publication didn't print the article. That's the fastest $10,000 we ever made. Even before the Harvard Kennedy School posted the paper online, the project had already spooked editors at The Atlantic, who originally commissioned the essay in the early 2000s. What? The Atlantic, which is like CIA, NATO, like Dear Diary. The Harvard Kennedy School, which is like the CIA's in-house think tank and networking hub. I guess the CIA was just at war with itself over Israel policy. Like, that's how I read this. So after they commissioned them to not print the article, they then paid them, after they commissioned them to write the article, they then paid them a kill fee to not print what they paid them to research? So the Atlantic just commissioned the essay, so they paid him for it? This wasn't like Harvard? Harvard didn't think of this on their own? They were... Walt had been serving since 2002 as the academic dean at Harvard's Kennedy School. As prestigious an appointment as exists in the field, and Mearsheimer taught at UChicago. The backlash was swift, intense. A wave of news articles described them as anti-Semites. ADL called an anti-Jewish creed. Okay, it is not that. It's not. There's nothing even remotely like that. The pressure became so intense that the Kennedy School removed its logo from the paper and added a disclaimer distancing the institution from its arguments. I feel like this is how you get anti-Israel sentiment, is instead of acknowledging it and justifying it because there is some superseding benefit, you just deny it. If when you just deny it instead of justifying it, and the facts are clear and irrefutable, sorry, just my personal opinion on this, just bothers me about this. I mean, like, I never hear pro-Israel voices mentioning, for example, that, you know, the U.S. taxpayer gave more money to Ukraine in the past 5 years than the U.S. taxpayer has given to Israel since 1948, since its founding. Doesn't mean the United States is secretly run by President Zelensky. At the same time, there are like a lot more entanglements, and the lobbying apparatus is much more like Ukraine is not Ukraine. Ukraine is just a NATO thing. And the NATO lobby, in my view, is substantially bigger than the Israel one. I think that's evidenced simply by the numbers. It's a couple billion a year, effectively, to Israel in aid. It's $360 billion in just the past 3 years to Ukraine. Instead of being a realist and talking about the benefits of what you're lobbying for, this rush to just call everyone an anti-Semite for bringing up the fact that this lobbying apparatus exists means nobody, when people come across these facts and they don't hear any benefit about it, every messenger of the pro-Israel cause then looks like they're trying to hide something. I mean, it's just an unbelievably horrible PR strategy. Despite holding no formal role, Epstein was a powerful figure at Harvard. He had spent years cultivating relationships at the university, donating more than $9 million between 1998 and 2008, positioning himself as a fixer and patron for high-profile academics, including Dershowitz and Larry Summers, who was the president of Harvard at the time. Right. And Larry Summers is who Epstein was fixing deals with in Mongolia, around the same Rio Tinto mining interest that George Soros was investing in. Yeah. Conservative talking points cluster around 70 to 100 million in China or CCP-linked funding to Harvard over the last 5 years. $100+ million from CCP-linked individuals as contributions to Harvard. That's what makes me go, okay, I am totally willing to consider this analysis. There might be parts of it I agree with. I don't like that you're writing this while you're getting $100 million from China. That makes it look like Biden level corruption, where Biden regime changes the government of the government of Brazil, to be replaced with a openly replacing U.S. influence and U.S. interests with Chinese influence and Chinese ones, while the Biden first family, while Biden's president and in charge of the State Department and CIA and USAID, and Biden's son is having $10 million consulting agreements with the CCP. Then it looks like you're using the CIA and State Department to advance China's interests because your family is making tens of millions of dollars with Chinese businessmen. Now, when you tell me stop worrying about Chinese hegemony, I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Now I'm no longer reading the analysis for things I agree or disagree with, whether or not we spend too much on it, whether or not it's better spent on our own infrastructure, or now I'm reading it for, why are you saying this? But what's interesting now is Stephen, like, and this is another thing, because now there's this like war between Israel and China, because China invested $400 billion in Iran, $400 billion in Iran. And China appears to be shipping missiles through its new train track to Iran. This is one of the reasons that Israel had to rely on the United States to attack Fordo and have its back, because Israel was not just fighting Iran in that conflict. Iran was being backed by China. So now when I see Stephen Walt, like stuff like this, like $100 million in donations to Harvard, and then you see Stephen Walt wrote the Israel lobby criticizing what I think was fairly at the time, the structure and influence of, foreign government lobbying efforts. Then you see today, you're like, okay, makes like the very next question is like, okay, well, Stephen Walt, does he have Larry Summers style business relationships with those very Chinese donors to Harvard University, where he's the academic dean of the Harvard Kennedy School and still a director at the Harvard Belfer Center? Because then you're like, okay, is this whole institute like, but this is one of these proxy, right? This is like one of these proxy wars where it's like, Israel and Trump, and to some extent Russia, against like Biden, the Democrats, and China. Like, anyway, it all gets. But okay, so at the time, Epstein served as trustee and president of the family financial office of Les Wexner, which donated nearly $20 million to the Kennedy School between 2000 and 2006. Oh my God. For the first 6 years of the Bush administration, Les Wexner's family office, his funds, donated nearly $20 million to the Harvard Kennedy School in just 6 years. The Harvard Gazette described the Wexner Foundation's contributions as underwriting core operating expenses for the school. The foundation also funded a visiting scholar program, the Wexner Israel Fellowship Program, which allowed 10 Israeli government officials to attend the Kennedy School each year. This is going to be like, if you understand the Harvard Kennedy School is the covert influence network creator. Like when you go, like in all the major schools have this, right? Yale has this with the Yale Jackson School. Johns Hopkins has this. Like if I go to YouTube and I type in, Johns Hopkins global networks, right? Building a global network. Johns Hopkins SAIS. Oh, they have a monetized account, right? And this is what they do. This is how Gary Kasparov built his CIA network at the Harvard Kennedy School. This is how Maya Sandu built her CIA network at the Harvard Kennedy School. This is how Alexandre de Moraes builds his CIA network. And by CIA, I don't mean explicitly CIA necessarily, although sometimes yes. If you remember, by the way, it was the Harvard Kennedy School that coordinated, it was those two Harvard Kennedy School guys who coordinated the Gary Kasparov gun running operation. Kasparov gun running Sudan to spend $7 million on AK-47s in a South Sudan coup plot. This was, again, because Gary Kasparov introduced a financier to the coup plotters because Gary Kasparov knew them at the Harvard Kennedy School. Harvard fellows Peter Ajak and Abraham Keach, with conspiring to illegally export arms to South Sudan, their home country, to overthrow its government. These two guys, Gary Kasparov introduced these two guys to this New York financier to give $7 million to buy a huge cache of guns. And again, Ajak was a former child soldier who resettled in the U.S., studied at Harvard Kennedy School, and then worked as a World Bank economist before becoming a South Sudanese opposition activist. That's the same thing in Bangladesh after the CIA coup in Bangladesh that we've covered many times. This was literally a color revolution. Bangladesh street protest 2024. The CIA, through the National Endowment for Democracy, as we covered in those streams, and USAID, funded the street protests that toppled the democratically elected Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of Bangladesh. Courtesy of USAID and the CIA and the British government. We went over all that stuff on stream. Remember, IRI, Ned, funded the rap music videos to promote these protests. And was it Yunus, Bangladesh, the Hillary Clinton friend who was put in, Muhammad Yunus? That's who the CIA installed after the successful coup in 2024 under Biden. And I believe Yunus was World Bank, right? Or maybe it was his deputy. Bangladeshi economist. From banker to bloodsucker, the trials of Muhammad Yunus. Dhaka Tribune was founded by Zafar Soban, World Economic Global leader who received a Maurice Greenberg World Fellow at Yale. So the Dhaka Tribune, I guess, was supporting these CIA-backed riots, launched a TV show jointly with Ned, the CIA front, Ned's IRI. And then it turns out that the guy who runs the Dhaka Tribune received a Maurice Greenberg World Fellow program at the same place Alexei fucking Navalny did. So I'm sorry, it wasn't the Harvard Kennedy School, it was the Yale version of it. The Yale Jackson School that we just talked about. The Maurice Greenberg World Fellows, where this would-be installed leader, the guy they tried to make the president of Russia, I think they declared him formally the president of Russia at one point, getting trained on how to organize mostly peaceful protests to overthrow governments. They successfully did that in the case of Bangladesh, as we just showed. Literally, these are these same protests that the CIA and Ned and USAID back. Being trained to do that in the Yale CIA program. It looks like it was the same thing in Bangladesh. Well, partnered with Ned. Graduate 2009. Maya Sandu from Harvard got her fellowship or her thing in 2010. Navalny in 2010. We saw Maria Corina Machado also came out of the Yale Jackson School, who just won the Nobel Peace Prize and, has been declared the president of Venezuela. But all right, let's get back to it. So we're at the Wexner Foundation. But once again, this is another thing where Wexner's got his financial office. He's got his family office. It's the same thing as the Soros. Remember that Soros chart that we did? Yeah, where it was like Soros, the fund, and then Soros, the foundation, the Open Society Foundation. The foundation works to maximize investments of the fund. I would not be surprised if the foundation was sponsoring the Harvard Kennedy School to push things that the Wexner family office was investing in. That's that donor drafter class, civil society mobilization to nudge things that maximize the fund's investments. The consequences of the coordinated smear campaign were dire for Mearsheimer and Walt. Were they that dire? I mean, Stephen Walt's still at Harvard. This wasn't like they canceled a scheduled talk. I mean, they didn't get fired for it. Neither of them did. I actually remember being a little surprised by how little the backlash was. They got criticized, but they didn't get fired. They didn't get reprimanded. They kept their positions. It's not like a real cancellation. You use the word retarded in 2013, you'd get canceled harder than these guys did for writing the Israel lobby in 2007. Okay, blah, 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 blah. I want to see more on, that might be all there is on the Harvard Kennedy School and the Wexner Foundation. Okay, here are the 20 Harvard Kennedy School specific takeaways from Daniel Golden's spy schools, pulled from the book itself and Golden's contemporaneous interviews coverage about that chapter. Golden reports that the CIA places undercover officers into Harvard Kennedy School's mid-career program. Harvard Kennedy School's mid-career program is exactly what this stuff is. Alexei Navalny was mid-career. Maria Corina Machado was mid-career. Zafar Soban was mid-career. So the CIA directly places undercover people at the Harvard Kennedy School to influence. Like right now, the head of the censorship court, I'm sorry, I meant to say it was Barroso, not Moraes, who's at Harvard Kennedy School. Barroso was the head of the Brazilian Supreme Court. I mean, technically, he was like Moraes' boss. Moraes, the Voldemort judge in Brazil, ran the censorship court, the TSE, which is a subcomponent of the STF, the Supreme Court, that Luis Barroso was the head of. And Barroso, the head of the Brazil Supreme Court, the guy who was the back channel, Barroso was literally the back channel for the Biden State Department to covertly get electronic voting machines into the country. He was mid-career at Harvard Kennedy School. While the CIA, Bill Burns, Brazil, while the CIA was dispatched down to Brazil to warn Bolsonaro not to question the upcoming election results, the upcoming election for an election that was still 6 months away. And key to that whole plot was the massive censorship and control over the election system by Luis Barroso, the head of the Brazil Supreme Court, who was allied with the Biden administration and the Lula administration against Bolsonaro. While the Biden CIA was running these anti-Bolsonaro ops in Brazil, was the Biden CIA at the Harvard Kennedy School talking to Barroso behind the scenes? Brazil electronic voting machines, Barroso. I talked about this in my testimony to the Brazil Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Disinformation, conspiracy theories, Barroso. This is in 2021, over a year before the election. Barroso citing democratic backsliding. Open your butthole, democratic backsliding. Where do you think he learned that term? Probably learned it at the Harvard Kennedy School. But it was Barroso who was like the main point of contact, the electronic voting machines. Like if I If I show you this, it's from the Financial Times. The U.S. provided practical help needed to manufacture new machines. Former U.S. ambassador to Brazil, Anthony Harrington, was able to leverage connections inside chipmaker Texas Instruments to give priority to Brazil instead of the U.S. in the middle of a chip shortage. The U.S. State Department and some senior Brazilian officials, that was Barroso, also asked Taiwanese authorities to give priority to Brazil's need for semiconductors, which are used in the voting machines, even though the president of the country said no. Bolsonaro. Electronic voting machines. This article also had like Stonebridge, Albright, Stonebridge. I cited it. I'll have to find it later. It's an incredible article. There's a recording of me going over it. So even if it was pulled down, I still have the recording. But that's crazy that the CIA deliberately places undercover officers into the same place that we recruit these influential foreign officials at the School of Government. What's the citation for this? Harvard admits these officers under their cover resumes. The school doesn't know at application time. This is incredible. Once enrolled, the officers can privately alert the university to their true status. Classmates are not told. The officers often use State Department-style diplomatic covers. While they're not supposed to recruit in class, the networking design of the mid-career program makes relationship building easy. Oh my God. They're going to get fucking, like, imagine this. The Biden admin wants to rig the election against Bolsonaro in Brazil. They get Luis Barroso into the mid-career program at the Harvard Kennedy School. And then they have relationship building exercises with their classmates. And the Biden CIA, hey, buddy, old pal, looks like we're stuck together for this class assignment. You know, they really need electronic voting machines in your country, don't you think? Aren't they safe and reliable? Trump really sucks, right? Bolsonaro's kind of the Trump of the tropics, they say. Oh, really? You're the head of the Brazil Supreme Court? That's cool. Didn't know that before I started talking to you about the state of democracy in Brazil. The Harvard Kennedy School and the CIA have an understanding. The agency won't conduct field work or operational activity on campus. We'll just recruit them, shape them, give them opportunities. The arrangement is long-standing and institutionally tolerated. Yeah, long-standing from the very beginning. I mean, Harvard was working with the CIA right out the gate, as we covered in our Philip Mosley article. Literally in the late 1940s, Harvard was working with the CIA. First on Sovietology and the Cold War, and then it spiraled into the whole world. Golden names Kenneth Moscow as an example of a CIA officer who enrolled undercover at the Harvard Kennedy School, illustrating it's a pattern rather than one-off. But Russian intelligence also penetrates the Harvard Kennedy School. Yeah, sure. Andrei Bezrikov is a vivid example, a Russian illegal who entered the Harvard Kennedy School mid-career cohort under an alias. That's interesting. Might be true. He emphasizes why Harvard Kennedy School is attractive. The mid-career cohort is target-rich, full of rising foreign officials and policy elites, precisely the people agencies want to know and call on. Harvard Kennedy School is part of a broader CIA strategy of exploiting university settings, including operations like staging academic conferences to entice nuclear scientists to defect. The anti-CIA guidelines in the 1970s, the norms around them have eroded. Characterizes the Harvard-CIA relationship as cozy compared to other campuses. But there's still periodic flare-ups. Relationship mapping, exactly. Promising foreign peers who later return home to positions of influence. In Brazil, in Moldova, in Bangladesh, Probably almost every country, any country of geopolitical significance. Well, there's your Harvard Kennedy School. And of course, now we're learning the largest funder of the Harvard Kennedy School was Les Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein's sponsor. That's another fucking Epstein CIA data point. Fuck.